Well, let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back to the 36%, ladies and gentlemen.
It's been a while.
Oh, yeah, it's been an entire season break.
Yes, not all entirely our fault.
Well, here's our plan. We're going to break this show up into seasons based on when the government is and isn't open.
I think that's dangerous.
Well, it gives us a lot of breaks.
That's
or at least
true.
it will over the next 2 years.
Season 2 could be ridiculously short.
After
we surely hope that all of you had a lovely winter holiday, winter break, and are now back full stride.
We might be implementing some changes in the second season. The 36%, we're continuing to refine our craft. Most importantly, from a content standpoint, we're hopefully going to deliver on our promise from the very beginning to make this a podcast about not only federal government and current events,
What about the state governments as well?
as it will come to no surprise to most of you, though we are all getting caught up on what our federal government actually does and how it functions and who the actors there are. State government is still kind of this very mysterious, ethereal thing that no one really cares about. So our job is to illuminate some of the mysteries of what actually gets done at your respective state capitals. Though it will be Missouri specific, I think you'll learn a lot of lessons that are applicable to you wherever you're listening from.
Exactly. And if you are in Missouri, you'll definitely learn today why you're going to be charged thousands of dollars in April.
You'll learn exactly who to be mad at.
Yes.
Whose offices to call.
Yes. I can provide all of that.
Right. As we kind of go along, we might make some other changes to the podcast. But regardless, thank y'all for sticking with us, or if this is your first time tuning into the podcast.
Welcome.
My name is Brett.
And I'm Adam.
And let's just get right on into it.
Let's do this.
All right. So today is January 26th, 2018.
Got to do that.
Yeah, well, we're doing it now. It's really coincidental. We actually filmed the last episode of the last season, which will never come out because
Adam's mic decided to be real stupid.
Some glitch happened in the Matrix and it got
real
ruined.
odd.
But it's symbolic because we filmed that episode on the day the government shut down, which was a Friday back in December.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And as of
35 days, 36 days.
Yeah, it was 36 days ago today. But as of yesterday, technically, the government has now reopened. Monday's when everyone goes back to work, but yesterday was the symbolic day. Yesterday being Friday was the symbolic day that the Senate actually they agreed on a bill to pass to keep the government open. Now, it's important to note that this is a continuing resolution.
Only works for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So come mid-February, we will be having another one of these rounds of shutdown probably because we're not going to fund a border wall.
See, okay, now here's the interesting about that. Because it is a continuing resolution, it does expire in 3 weeks. That set up the president in his long-winded speech about how he was going to sign the bill that the Senate passed to open the government back up. He used this as a threat to say either we're going to shut the government down again if we don't get, or really he didn't even propose that. He basically just said if we don't get the funding for the wall before then, I'm just going to declare a national emergency and build the wall like that, be done with it. I don't think he wants another shutdown.
Yeah.
He saw how damaging that was to him. And the fact that the reason we even got out of it was because Nancy Pelosi kicked him out of the Capitol, canceled the State of the Union. The Democrats played their cards to a T to not concede that they weren't going to give him the money.
This is true. We did not break rank, thank God.
Yeah.
So we had
I mean, Joe Manchin did vote against it. Let's not forget.
Yeah, but we don't really rely on him for much. So
we don't look to Joe Manchin for inspiration or leadership so much anymore. But this, I think, is a really good indication of where we're at and where we're going, what we're probably going to see for the next year as Trump continues to try to get some of his agenda pushed through. Now that we have this Democratic House, and everyone was skeptical of Nancy Pelosi.
But this, oh my God, peace, love.
Really?
No, really though. Like I think, and this, what this really does is shows the importance of what we did back in November with electing a Democratic House and how pinnacle that really is to putting a check on the Trump's power. Yeah. And what this, while the shutdown is ridiculously costly and it is awful that we even have such an institution set up that this has to occur. Yeah. Because it costs the country and it costs people millions of dollars, and especially what this really does is it hurts federal workers, and that's an awful thing that we should really work to. I really hope that there is some kind of effort to help them out in some way to make up for what the last month and a week have truly done to them, because that's this is a massive financial shock to every one of these individuals. So
yeah, with the continuing resolution, before we even got there, I think about 2 weeks into the shutdown, the Senate and the House approved a bill that authorized back pay for the 800,000 or so federal workers who were going without it. Now there's efforts to put in for the contractors, so the non-federal employees,
which are basically federal employees still.
To get their pay as well. So it is still bipartisanly popular to support workers and to ensure that they get paid. So it's nice to see that that's remained, which I think, again, just still goes to the fact that this shutdown was unnecessary and uncostly. And to kind of get to the whole crux of the thing here, the wall came out as a centerpiece for why the shutdown occurred. The president made it very clear that the government was going to shut down going into the budget process if the wall was not approved and paid for. And it really begged the question to why the Democrats didn't approve the money for the wall, or why the wall, after 2 years, we heard about it all during the campaign, why suddenly became an issue that necessitated the government shutting down. The facts of the matter, or the facts of the case, are that we've been through 2 different budget processes and a couple of debt ceiling raised processes, which are all integral junctions of when the government can potentially shut down because we stop funding it. And in all those times with the Republican-controlled Congress, nothing happened. The wall wasn't an issue at the time.
Yeah. Well, there was initial talk of that whole DACA deal with the first shutdown that did occur. Yeah. Basically, like, every single time that we've had a government shutdown, one of the ways, especially under the Obama administration, one of the ways that we ended these shutdowns was Republicans would always ask for more funding for the border, for border security. And we've continuously said yes to this. And so we have spent an increasing amount of money on border security, especially, all throughout this. And really, like, we have seen since Obama took office in the late years of Bush a significant decrease in illegal border crossings, and this is a good thing. But basically, like, that continuous funding has basically we've spent too much money on this, and now with this wall, which is going to be heavily ineffective in regards to the kind of border crossing we see nowadays, which is not physical, like people walking across the border. It's people overstaying their visas and that kind of thing. And so what this is this is a political ploy, and it's this is all fear mongering. This is hate politics. This is basically just ways that the Republicans are slightly grasping onto the slight amount of power, ideological sway that they have with the aging, dying population of this country.
But I think all of this is going to be really representative and reflective of what's going to come. So we saw in 2016 when he took office, the big fight then was Obamacare, repealing Obamacare. Now, Trump got in office a little late to make that part of the budget debate, but it was still the big issue for that. Then when the second budget came around, it was DACA, and it was funding the Dreamers and that whole piece of legislation, whether or not he could overturn that with an executive order. Yeah. And now it was the wall. Now, I don't know if he's going to end up getting the wall or not. Even if he does declare a national emergency and go on to try to allocate all the resources and everything, he's still going to have to go onto people's private property and try to allocate that or try to claim that. And it's just going to turn into a bunch of lawsuits. It's going to get bogged down in the political process.
There's a lot of eminent domain cases that would then have to be filed. Yeah.
But still, the way he's trying to pursue his agenda is not through building bipartisan coalitions. It's through making crisis moment after crisis moment after crisis moment. So how effective is that going to be in 2020?
I think what we've started to see, and this has especially occurred with the caravan scare tactics, is the fact that has not worked for him. The caravan did not work. No. It was a ploy to maintain Republican control in the 2018 midterms. That failed. Yeah. Along with that, that crisis failed. This government shutdown has shown largely to be unfavorable.
Yeah, I don't think
by everyone, and it's largely blamed upon the Republican Party and Trump. And while Mitch McConnell also shares a large amount of the blame for this whole process continuing.
But again, going back to the point, we see with the wall, his constituency wasn't persuaded as much by the fact this is an ongoing crisis. Those people that think MS-13 is streaming across the border, the people think that illegal immigrants are the ones that are responsible for all the rape and murder in this country.
And Ebola.
They're not going to be convinced otherwise. But we look at the very narrow sliver of moderate Republicans that he really is going to depend on in 2020 and that the rest of the Republican Party is going to depend on in 2020. It doesn't appear that they were convinced. No one was riled up about this, especially now that we're getting back into the swing of things with the government being back open. So be prepared for a lot of gridlock coming out of this going into 2020. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another shutdown. But Mitch McConnell, speaking about him, or an interview one of his press secretaries gave coming out of the vote to reopen the government, he's really expressed a lot of his intention to walk back from the president, saying, this was his plan. I just went with his plan. It was the president's plan to close the government, and we just went with it. So,
and I think that is, you're right. This is definitely a ploy towards the suburban Republicans that they're going to really rely on, because that's not the kind of people that Trump really that goes for and relies on. And I think this is the interesting thing that will really be shown here is basically just how the Republicans will change how they act in Congress and, even in state government because of the imminent presidential campaign and election. And I think that's really going to be very telling, because what you're most likely going to see is there's really competitive districts. I think that 2018 was a way to show that they cannot rely on competitive districts going Republican due to gerrymandering. And I don't think they can align themselves with the president on every issue and the rest of the Republican Party and still be able to maintain these competitive districts. And so I think that you're going to see a major change and a major break from the president. As, just like what Obama saw in 2010 when you had a bunch of Democrats that, or throw attack ads against Obama, and we're trying to distance themselves as far as possible. I think we're going to see a very similar move, and I really don't think that it will work, because it didn't work in 2010, probably won't work in 2020.
Regardless, I'm really happy that the federal government gets to go back into session, at least for a couple weeks. We can have our food checked again and our flights regulated, and the LaGuardia Airport can open again.
And Brett and I can do a podcast.
Yeah,
we're not able to because for some reason when the government's shut down, we can't
record.
So it's just how this works. Don't even ask questions.
Yeah. So in more federal government news.
Right. So over the last month or so, we've had some presidential campaigns being announced.
Yeah,
that's exciting stuff.
Everyone in the Democratic Party apparently is running for the primary.
So, and it's going to be an exciting one, but to go through this list quickly, because I know we've done this before, but now people have officially announced, it becomes a little more real.
Less speculation. Now we just get to criticize.
Exactly, and also all of these people get to go on apology tours for shit that they've said in the past.
Yep. Oh, 2019 is going to be a fun year.
Oh my God, a lot of sorry Democrats. All right, so first one, Donald Trump. He has announced that he's running for president.
Surprise, he's running.
And not on the Democratic ticket. So, Brett, do we want to predict whether or not he's going to have a Republican challenger?
Okay, actually, I think John Kasich is going to primary him.
I think so, too.
John Kasich, for those of you who don't know, is the former governor from Ohio. He ran for the Republican nomination for president. As far as I can remember.
He held out the longest.
I really don't know all the years here. I just know he's run in
3.
All of the major cycles. But, he comes in with a decent percentage of the moderate Republican and some conservative Republican votes. And he, by and large, is a voice of reason in a lot of this. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he mounts his own challenge in the primary.
Yeah.
The Republican Party is going to try as hard as they might to prevent that from happening.
Yeah. Oh, because they've put all their baskets in an orange crazy. All their eggs.
What?
Never mind.
They put all of their eggs in an orange crazy basket.
All right. I have a New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
So stop trying to make fucking metaphors
Stop
on this
mixing
podcast.
goddamn metaphors. I'm still shook on the fish market in the middle of San Francisco.
Fish market. For those that don't know what the hell we're talking about, go listen to our first episode.
Yeah.
First episode.
But regardless, that would be. I don't know if that's ever happened.
Yeah.
When that's ever happened, if it has happened.
It definitely has, but I think that this is going to be it's the only reasonable.
Well, there's been independent challenges.
But what this is really going to do, and I think that if Kasich is able to really mount this and really actually fund this, what it's going to do is split the primary vote. You're going to find the crazy Trump voter, and you're going to find the moderate Republican, if they even do exist in this day and age. And I think that's going to be it'll be very telling as to the state of the Republican Party if those two if those two are the main front runners in the 2020 presidential primary for the Republican ticket. So,
and I think it is tempting for the knee-jerk reaction on something like John Kasich running a Democratic response is, oh, good, if we can not confuse but necessarily split the Republican attention between a race between Trump and Kasich, they can't get organized enough. I don't think that's necessarily true.
I don't.
It's just a primary.
I don't think it I'm not sure it helps Democrats in any way.
I don't think it does.
I think what it does is it just shows how divided and how splintered the Republican Party has become. Yeah. And honestly, though, I think that chaos may actually be what helps. I think that potentially could show how, especially because Trump's going to win the nomination. We know that. He will beat Kasich in the primary.
Well, what if he didn't? But what if he didn't?
Then we would have a serious threat to the 2020 presidential campaign.
I think stepping back from politics for like a half sec, I think if Kasich runs, it's the best thing for the American people. Because it gives Republicans a chance to come out and denounce Trump. And it would potentially give us someone, even if Kasich won, and I've said this for a long time, he is someone, though he is a Republican, though he is conservative in some areas, he's not a fucking crazy person.
No,
he's
really
not
is
a
not a
lunatic.
crazy. Yeah.
So I think even with that, because I'm so skeptical about this list of Democrats we're going to get to in a moment, even if Kasich were to step into the race, I would put support behind him from a Republican standpoint. I'd still work for a Democrat, but I'd support him from the Republican standpoint because I think so. John Kasich, you got the 36% tentative approval to primary Trump. Not in the general, but you can primary him. You have our approval.
You have our endorsement only in the primary.
Right.
So,
Anywho,
moving on.
to the Democrats, the people you all came to hear about.
Yes, Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, he's a mayor from
South Bend, Indiana. He's a Hoosier fam.
Yeah.
We're talking about Indiana now.
Yeah, so
great,
from Mike
great
Pence's
state.
own neck of the woods, from Adam here's own neck of the woods.
I was like, what the? Why is he the one announced first?
Yeah, so Pete Buttigieg was a mayoral candidate, if my memory serves me correctly, back in 2016, and he really came to prominence as first of all, he's an openly gay Democrat, openly gay politician, openly gay Democrat is no surprise to anybody, but we still are running very short of openly gay politicians that successfully win office at high levels. And South Bend, Indiana is no small town.
Yeah, it's where, to give you guys an idea, it's where Notre Dame is.
Yeah, it's just an inspiring guy to get behind. He had a really good message going into his own election. He got a lot of national attention, but I mean, so far as we know, he hasn't done a half bad job in South Bend. So if he runs, he brings in an outside voice. I think we're looking for someone who's a little outside the norm for the Democratic Party in this election, and he fits the bill.
Yeah. So moving on, we have Senator
Kirsten Gillibrand.
Kirsten
Gillibrand.
She is a Democratic senator from New York.
Yep.
She has been very outspoken, and on January 15th, during her appearance on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, she announced that she's running for president.
Yeah.
What do we have to say about her, Brett?
Well, she's another one of these big actors of the Democratic Party that we've been watching since 2016, and admittedly before then.
Yeah, we've known that she's going to have run.
Yeah,
she's very open about that.
She's been looked to as a leader of the party. I mean, being from New York, a Democrat from New York, how can you not be looked at in such a way? She, as far as her politics are concerned, is one of the more moderate Democrats running. She still has a lot of the progressive ideals that we've been using as a litmus test in the past, since like 2014, realistically.
Now she does.
Yeah, she came from the stock of the old, I don't know if she took Clinton's seat in the Senate, in the New York Senate. I want to say that she did, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But she comes from that stock of where, again, it's a liberal wing of the party, but it's not an Elizabeth Warren, who we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
She is very pro-welfare programs, pro-expansion of the government, but still kind of temperate on let's not tax the hell out of the wealthy kind of deal.
But interestingly, and she had to, actually Trevor Noah does a really good piece on basically the apology tour of nearly every Democrat we're about to list, is the fact that she used to be a representative of New York from upstate New York. Used to have like an A rating from the NRA. She used to not believe in rights for the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of real issues that we would take today with that.
Yeah.
And especially when we get down to talking about
Tulsi
Gabbard. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, let's just go right into it. So she is a representative from Hawaii. She's one of 2 or 3 that Hawaii has. She is a former veteran. Honestly, a very interesting history. She has basically, she used to be a fan of conversion, like electroshock conversion therapy for she used to be very pro-gun as well. A lot of controversial things.
Where people like Senator Gillibrand you would come across as moderate in the sense of not necessarily advocating for LGBT rights, for gun control and things. They simply took a step back and really not commenting on it or trying to be bipartisan in their approach of saying, yeah, maybe it is, maybe not. She is someone
who has been very outspoken about being against those things.
Yeah, so she is really going to have a lot to make up for if she hopes to secure
I definitely think
the liberal wing of the party.
nice segue. Moving on to someone who is ridiculously genuine,
Yeah.
and who have we found to be not only a friend of the pod, but a friend of human decency.
Yeah.
Senator Kamala Harris
Yeah.
of California.
Believe it or not, she does listen to the 36%. She's
Yep.
a friend of the pod.
We have a California listener, or multiple, and she is
one of
she's
them.
all of them.
Yeah.
Her and her staff. We know this confirmed. Anyways,
She's the one I'm most excited about so far.
me too. Honestly, well, she's my number 2.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll get to it.
Big fan of her. She has she announced her candidacy on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. She is an African American running for the Democratic ticket, providing a nice amount of diversity and representing the Big Tent Party by which we represent.
Yeah.
She is a very progressive member of the caucus. Medicare for all has been one of her major things that she ran on in her last election.
Yeah.
She's just great.
Yeah.
Big fan.
She comes from California, where she served as the Attorney General of the state before entering the congressional delegation from California. So she comes from a prosecutorial background. This has been very evident through things as she's served on the judiciary. Has been very evident through things like the Kavanaugh hearings.
Especially during the we talked about episode 2. If you want to rewind of season 1, 1.2, one might say. If you roll it back all the way there, you'll find that's when we talked about Kavanaugh. We talk about her quite a bit.
Yeah, we praised her highly in that. The reason I'm so excited about her is because she is somebody who you can tell just by the way she behaves, by the way she holds herself, and the type of politician that she is she's someone that comes at this from a very moral perspective, from an activist perspective.
It's very humanistic.
Yeah, and she is an inspirational figure. Now, what we're going to see in 20, and this is going to be the measuring stick that we have to hold up to all of our potential candidates, is how are they going to fare on a stage next to Donald Trump when he starts the name calling, when he starts the attacking, and the fact that she is a brown woman from California in the Democratic Party is going to give Trump and his base just a ton of ammo to use against her. So we have to look at these people. We have to look at our candidate and say, is this going to be someone who's going to stoop to the level of name calling like the Republicans did in the primary, like Lo Marco, like Lion Ted? Are they? Are we going to? Yeah. Are we going to put someone up there who's going to engage in that and basically screw our chances? And I don't think she is. What I'm holding my breath more for is what our next candidate did as a result of being name called by Trump.
Yes.
Elizabeth Warren famously, after being called Pocahontas by Trump, went out and got her DNA tested to prove that she is some fucking minor part Native American and that he was being insensitive when he was saying all this. That's all fine and dandy. But Jesus Christ, we don't need a candidate who's going to get up on stage and play his own fucking game. And that's exactly what Senator Warren has proven that she's going to do so far. That, and I just have a huge issue with her policies in general. But Adam, why don't you get in and tell us about Senator Elizabeth Warren a little
Right.
bit.
So the person that I'm most excited about, as contrary to what Brett might say,
Yep.
is Elizabeth Warren. She's been, and from this list, she's one of the longest-serving Democrats, in a place of power that we've had at a national level. She's a senator from Massachusetts. She is a woman.
Incredibly progressive.
She is, but the thing that I really like about her is that she's always been incredibly progressive, and that her ideals and her policies have not really wavered or changed much as the party has caught up to them.
Yeah.
One thing that especially one of the things I really like about her is how she deals with economic issues and her economic policy, not only being for large amounts of, like being against tax cuts for the rich and corporate tax cuts and all of these things.
Four very progressive
Exactly.
tax brackets.
But one of the other things is the fact that she is also the founder of the Bureau of Consumer Finance Protection, which was created after the 2008, banking crisis.
Yep.
That now is the institution that we have that basically prevents that from happening again.
Hypothetically.
Well, yes.
It's supposed to.
And it works. It works really well.
It works when the right people are in the head of it.
Yes, but regardless, it's still the institution that watches our banks.
Yeah.
And it's something that shows that she is not only a highly capable politician, but she also does and acts in the ways that we need.
Yeah.
And while, yes, I do share your concerns over how she responded to the criticism from Trump with the whole Pocahontas allegations, I do think that she is a well-seasoned enough politician that if the need did arise that she would be able to effectively stand on stage with orange fuck of a president that we have and comparably show not only her ideals but the ideals of the country and win people over and win. I think that she's capable of doing that, and I think she is. Honestly, I think of the people that have been announced thus far, she is the most capable in winning the presidency.
So here's one of the few rare instances that Adam and I are actually going to disagree on something. I acknowledge all of these things, but of my concerns with Senator Warren has proven an exceptional leader in the Senate, and I think that's exactly where she should stay for that reason. Also, yes, we saw someone hop onto the furthest end of the political spectrum and somehow win the Republican nomination and go on to win the country, though it's important to note that he won the electoral map. He did not win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton still did that running as a very moderate member. So Elizabeth Warren, to me, is trying to fight fire with fire in the sense that where Donald Trump exists on the far end of the political spectrum, so does Elizabeth Warren. She is someone who is for a very big tax bracket for the incredibly wealthy to pay for these very progressive social welfare programs. I think these are great things to advocate, but they're just not palatable, especially to what I would assume is a majority even of our party, much less a majority of the American people. And it is really, you would hope that we have experienced enough politicians and that we have consultants on campaigns that would point the candidates in the right direction to do the right thing when they're attacked in a way that we know they're already going to be. But we've seen this happen time and time again where we have consultants and we have politicians who just don't think that way. They're stuck inside the little bubble of DC or whatever politics it is that they're practicing, and common sense tends to leave the room. And I'm going to point to this one thing before we move away from Elizabeth Warren, is that she just proposed her tax scheme of taxing the uber rich, and she called it something like the ultra super billionaire tax or something like that. You go up to the average American on the street and ask them how they feel about the super wealthy billionaire tax, and they're going to say, "What the fuck is that? It sounds ridiculous. You're pushing this libtard shit on me."
Oh, man.
And while I disagree with the sentiment that the average American might perpetuate onto something like that, you can't discount the fact that Elizabeth Warren is not going to be the most palatable candidate to majority of people. Not saying we have to appeal to the lowest common denominator, but just think about Duverger's law.
Oh, man.
Think about
we're doing this now.
Think about the political spectrum. If all their votes are over here, not all of our votes are over here. So we got to try to get some of the Republicans and a majority of the Democrats, not just our
farther left members of the party.
Our leftist friends in the party.
Well, all right. Well, moving to Missouri.
Missouri time.
So the State of the State, which is basically the State of the Union address for Missouri, happened last Wednesday. In it, our great governor, Mike Parson.
He's the former sheriff of Bolivar, Missouri.
Yes.
Which is a very small rural Missouri town, for those of you unfamiliar with the lovely place. He then came up to serve in the legislature for some time. So
He worked in the Senate.
He's an old boy Republican rural politician.
Yeah.
And he pursues policy in a like-minded way.
Yeah, so in his State of the State address, he outlined two major issues that Missouri is going to be focusing upon this session.
Yep.
The 100th General Assembly of Missouri. It's exciting stuff. He is going to be pursuing legislation that deals with infrastructure and workforce development. And basically what that means is setting aside $351 million in federal bonds to fund projects that help, I think it's like 250 or so bridges across the state of Missouri. We will hopefully also be working on our roads, but because Amendment D did not pass, which was that gas tax increase that Missourians voted down, because of that will not be going towards the Department of Transportation to fix more of our highways and roads.
Which, how typical Missouri, how typical Midwestern, we say,
Missouri.
well, instead of passing a state tax that we have more control over to fix our roads and everything, we're just going to accept the federal bond money that comes out of our income tax and the federal taxes we pay. That's earmarked for a ton of things. We're just going to take all of that and do with it what we could have paid for ourselves and controlled and dictated ourselves. But instead, we're going to have the federal government dictate to us what we can and cannot use it for, and just hope that using it for bridges is acceptable and appropriate.
I mean, I think that plan has been approved. And basically what that $551 million, what that allows him to do is not seek approval from the people, and much more seek approval from the legislature, which having a supermajority in both the House and the Senate, the Republican Party, which has been surprisingly uniform in the House, not so much in the Senate, which we'll get into in a moment, will most likely just hand the governor.
Yeah.
In terms of workforce development, one of his major things has been the funding of technical institutions and schools for training. What that does mean is operating large, for the most part, secondary education systems, all of the university and college levels. They're going to be holding those down to the same cut level that Greitens proposed, which is not a good thing. And what it means is expanding like 2-year programs and technical colleges.
Yeah, so we see this emphasis that is very prototypical of Midwestern states, in that there's a lot of sentiment towards higher education that tends to be a little negative, that it requires too much money just to produce kids that get degrees in things like political science. What kind of practical skill are you going to get with that?
Even though oh my God.
So now a lot of the emphasis is it's a very popular message in these kinds of places.
Yeah.
Let's invest in technical training. Let's get kids that are straight out of high school that don't necessarily want to go to college. Let's train them how to be a welder. Let's train them how to work on these bridges and roads that we so desperately need.
And a lot of it is also then retraining of individuals that are currently or have been in different sectors of the economy that are lessening and being competitive.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it's not a bad thing what this workforce development does, but largely what it doesn't do, or what the issues with all of this is the fact that he has proposed basically not to raise taxes at all, find money, quote unquote, find money from other places, which basically just means also cutting like something like hundreds of government positions, lessening, what he calls expanding accountability and efficiency within government by getting rid of state employees, which seems kind of counterproductive, because we all know that it really doesn't matter how many people you have. It just depends on how that's structured. Yeah. And I will go into the public administration aspects of this at a later date. So moving on to the Senate. Recently, as of this Thursday, we have announced that the Missouri Senate Republicans now have their own, basically what I'm like to call the Freedom Caucus in the Missouri Senate, which is this newly announced conservative caucus made up of 6 of the most crazy and conservative members of the Republican Senate.
Which I think this is the fact that they're forming this serves as a great example as to the state of our politics right now. It's really tempting to look at the list we just pulled out for presidential hopefuls in 2020 and to look at the resentment that's felt towards this conservative brand of Republican politics is being perpetuated from the federal level. A lot of people are disgruntled by that. A lot of people are disgusted by it. However, there's obviously still this very big population in conservative parts of the country that really like this brand of politics, that really like this continue to slash taxes, slash social programs. The government really should be as small as humanly possible. And the emergence of a Freedom Caucus, conservative caucus in the Missouri legislature in 2019, the fact that they didn't have one before and now they do, speaks to the direction. This ideology is not going away. It's here to stay, at least for the present time being. So now we have to question, what the hell's going to happen?
Yeah. So among, I hope that our listeners do know who their state senators are. If you live in Kirksville, which many of our listeners do, among this list is Senator O'Laughlin, who does represent our great Northeast Missouri.
Could have had Nate Walker.
Could have had him.
You didn't. Could have had Craig Redmond.
Nope.
You don't.
You don't.
You have Cindy O'Loughlin.
Yep.
Fuck that one up.
Oh my god.
Yep.
So going on to this list, you have Senator Onder.
Bob Fonder.
Yes, the 2nd senatorial district. Cindy O'Loughlin, who represents the 18th. You also have Senator Andrew
Koenig,
who represents the 15th, which is outside of St. Louis. You have Senator Denny Hoskins.
Denny.
From the 21st. You also then have Senator Bill Eigel. So him and Onder are most likely going to be the heads of this caucus.
Yeah.
That we will actually see how powerful they are, because they had a press briefing about this announcement of their caucus and issue, and it was one of the most dismal and basically pathetic.
Yeah, that's appropriate.
It was not what I was going to say. It was a pathetic show of what these people are trying to stand for and do.
So it's interesting that of all the names on the list, I mean, I imagine most of you won't recognize most of these people, if any of these names. Bob Onder is the only one that is above a sophomore level senator. Koenig and Eigel, this is their second session. The rest of the members of the caucus, this is their first. This is their freshman year. So, again, I'm fascinated just by this phenomenon. They come from places, most of them come from places in Missouri that have been conservative, that have been very Republican traditionally. But then why do we have this uber conservative wave coming in? What is so attractive to the voters with these people, especially when we have an emergency going on in the state of Missouri like we do now that is all based in a generated revenue problem. It's based on the fact that the taxes in this state are so low and so mismanaged that the state's broke.
Yeah, and really what this and what Brett is alluding to is and something that all of you that we alluded to earlier, that why Missourians are going to be charged thousands of more dollars in taxes, that than we normally would, is because the Department of Revenue, due to the tax cuts that occurred, at the federal level, the Department of Revenue did not change their withholding income brackets. And basically because of that, Missouri did not take in about $120 million that they thought they would have. And so because of that, now the average Missourian, and because of how Missouri's tax laws are written, the lower middle class especially is going to be basically slapped with this massive bill that we now have to front.
Yeah.
And what this does is, first off, the Department of Revenue really, really fucked up. And a lot of people within the government are pissed off. Amazingly, this was not mentioned once during the State of the State. And it just shows you how much Governor Parson does not want to touch this issue, because he, for some reason, has been totally exempt from any criticism, even though it is largely due to him, the head of the Department of Revenue.
I think this illustrates a really interesting problem in this weird relationship between federal and state government. I mean, yeah, it's an atrocious thing. This tax cut was an atrocious thing. But what we didn't expect to happen
is the fact that it would fuck over our entire state.
The states have to take into account what the federal government does. And in really complicated, huge bills like this, they completely override a tax system. Though your state and federal taxes are different things, they still have to essentially account for one another.
Oh, yeah. They're still largely are tied to one another, especially at the state level.
Yeah. So when we get things like these, we mentioned that Governor Parson is going to be using earmarked federal funds to work on the roads and things like this. You get percentages of federal earmarked dollars for certain things, and a lot of it's contingent on a vast number of factors, a huge number of factors, but a lot of it has to do with the population of your state, the tax revenue of your state, basically your level of need. And so when the calculus gets all thrown off by your state either taking in or not taking in X number of taxes in comparison to what it did federally, compared to what the federal government said it should do, compared to what the state government should do, it leads to just a ton of problems, because these are very complicated things, because these are really deep problems. Yeah. When you also have a governor who comes in and says the best way to make this department efficient, to make our administrative government efficient, is to gut the fucking thing. It's little wonder why we have problems like this.
Yeah.
And then you end up broke.
And another thing that just perpetuates this issue is that Missouri's GDP and the income of our state has been, I think it was like 2 to 5% lower than was what was projected.
Yeah.
And that is a massive issue because, again, Missouri is the government of Missouri is operating at a level by which it cannot fund.
Yeah.
And that's a major issue because Missouri is also mandated to pass a balanced budget every year. And what that is basically going to do is fuck over everything that has been proposed thus far.
No one's getting money this year.
And the places that are always hurt are social programs that help poor people, welfare, and higher education.
The elderly are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Newborns are going to get hurt. The poor are going to get hurt. Working families are going to get hurt. Middle-class families are going to get hurt.
Unions are always going to be hurt.
Unions are gone, but...
Especially, well, look, as long as Republicans are in power, unions will be under threat, and students like Brett and I are also going to be affected by this.
Yeah, so...
Basically, everyone that's not a white individual in suburban Missouri is going to be affected by this.
They're going to be affected too because the middle class is going to bear a majority.
Well,
of
no,
this.
I get that, but I'm saying the upper middle class.
The upper middle class
people that are a little more well off.
They're out in the country.
They're not though.
They have their plantations out in the country.
But
this is Missouri. It's a slave state.
Fucking hell.
The wealthy people have their plantations. Regardless, what this session for Missouri is going to be a really good example in crisis management and how a government reacts to these external forces of what happens when administratively you have this, not mistake really, but you have circumstances that lead to really an inability to govern effectively. And we're going to see what that looks like under a conservatively controlled government, and we're going to draw parallels to how that has looked and how that is going to look under the federal government over 2019.
Yeah, and last point here. I think what is going to be ridiculously interesting is to see how a government in a state that is entirely run by Republicans for Republicans has really fucked itself over. And what we're going to see, especially within the Senate, and this is, we have major insight into this, is the fact that you have a Senate Majority Leader, Senator Rowden, who is a younger, much more moderate member of the Republican caucus. He represents Boone County, a.k.a. Mizzou, and Columbia, which one would think would be represented by a Democrat, Rip Stephen Weber. But basically, it'll be interesting to see how he... No, he's not. How it's going to... It will be very interesting to see how that will play out when you have 6 members of your caucus that are already going to be vehemently against, opposed working with Democrats, working for any form of moderate solution to any of these issues facing Missouri, especially when they are vehemently opposed to taxes, raising taxes, welfare, expanding Medicaid, and basically just helping Missouri in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Along with that, you have a Speaker pro tem, Senator Schatz, who was elected unanimously, who is on his second day, due to some rule changes that they should have worked out within the Republican caucus, was fucking filibustered by his own members until they could gut those rule changes by an amendment. So it's very interesting to see already this gridlock that is going to be already does exist within the Republican caucus in the Senate.
So while we continue to give the play-by-play from Missouri, everyone listening, your homework is to look up and find out who your local representatives are in your local House and your local Senate, and check in on see how your state budget's doing. It's going to be a big problem for 2019.
Yeah.
And, keep your ear to the ground. We're going to try to continue to explain the importance of your state and local government while also giving you every step of the way leading into the 2019 Democratic primary, looking ahead for 2020.
Exactly. And we will we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
So
that's all we got. We ran up our time.
Yeah, we really did. We have a lot to cover, and we'll look forward to more Brexit. So.
Absolutely. All right, y'all take care now. You hear?
The 36% was founded, written, and directed by Adam Childers Arnold and Brett Combs.
Music in this episode is provided by Purple Planet. You can check them out at purple-planet.com.
The presenting sponsor of the 36% is Avian Apparel. You can check them out at myavian.com, and that code, the 36, still works.
Still works, folks.
Still works, fam. Get your Avian.
Yeah. Our audio engineering for this episode is done by Bert Crumbs.
Our ukulele muse is Adam California.
Our cover art is done by the wonderful Christian Ferguson.
And our new member of the podcast who didn't help out on this episode at all.
Yeah, he's got to prove himself.
Right, so our potential new member on this podcast who has not helped out at all is insert name here.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
We'll find out soon.
So thank you so much for listening and tuning in. Welcome to the second season of the 36%. It's exciting shit here.
Yeah. We'll see what 2019 has in store for all of us.
That we will. So I'm Adam.
And I'm Brett.
And this has been the 36%.